Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another Victober video. And today I'm going to be talking about 5 great Victorian literary matriarchs. So this is kind of in my 5 Victorian novels about series, but I couldn't think of the correct title to make it fit in that series because these books aren't really about these great characters. They just feature these great matriarch characters. So I thought I would just call it this and stick it in the playlist anyway. But basically, we have been reading this Victober, Hester by Margaret Oliphant, for our group read. And there is a wonderful character in Hester called Miss Catherine. And Miss Catherine is the head of the family. She runs the family bank. She saves it from disaster in the sort of prologue part of the book. She saves it from ruin and she continues to preside over the family. She's very wealthy. She is very outspoken in some ways. She's very, very tough. And I love the presentation of Catherine. I really love her as a character. I find her really engaging. She's very flawed, but she's also very, very strong and does what needs to be done when it needs to be done. She's incredibly intelligent and astute. And she's also a woman who has remained unmarried and worked in business, which is quite unusual within a Victorian novel. And reading this book and thinking about how much I love Miss Catherine as a character made me think about other characters who have a sort of similar position within Victorian literature. I could think of a few sort of matriarch characters, women who are sort of the head of their household in a way, and who are quite sort of strong, dominating personalities, and who are presented largely in a positive light. I don't really know what characteristics you have to be considered a matriarch or a literary matriarch, but I guess all of these characters are a generation above at least the main characters, so they are older women who kind of preside over their households. Anyway, I'm sure there are plenty of other characters who kind of fit into this role, but I thought of sort of 5 off the top of my head, and so I thought it might be fun to make a video about them. So as I said, we have Miss Catherine from Hester, who is a wonderful character who I really, really enjoy. One of my favourite elements of this book is Catherine. And in many ways, although the book is called Hester, I feel like it could be called Hester and Catherine. A lot of the book kind of revolves around the antagonism between Hester and Catherine, and I love that about this, and I love Catherine as a character. So that is number 1 on my list. And as I was reading Hester by Margaret Oliphant, I found myself reminded of Mrs. Thornton from North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. So North and South is the story of a young woman called Margaret Hale who moves from the south to the north of England to a manufacturing town called Milton, which is kind of Manchester. And Margaret has grown up in the south of England and suddenly finds herself in this whole new world in the industrial north. And she meets a manufacturer, a mill owner called Mr. Thornton, who she immediately dislikes, though he does not immediately dislike her. And his mother, Mrs. Thornton, is a wonderful, wonderful character who, like Catherine, has all this business sense and strength of character and will, and who presides over her family. Her son is the one who owns the mills, but you definitely get the impression that they are a team, and that he relies on her knowledge and strength and intelligence a lot. And I love Mrs. Thornton in North and South so much. She's such a wonderful character, and she doesn't like Margaret Hale, our heroine, and so you have quite a lot of antagonism between the two. She knows that her son has some interest in Margaret and definitely doesn't think that she is worthy of her son, and I just really enjoy Mrs. Thornton throughout this novel. I think she's an excellent character, dislikable in some ways, but also so admirable. Reading about Miss Catherine and Hester made me think of Mrs. Thornton in North South, and that kind of began this video. But I do have 3 more books to talk about, 3 more wonderful matriarchs within Victorian literature. So next I wanted to talk about Betsy Trotwood from David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. I love Betsy Trotwood. I feel like everyone who reads David Copperfield loves Betsy Trotwood. Betsy Trotwood is David's aunt, and we meet her first at the very beginning of the book when David is born, because when David is born, Betsy Trotwood comes to the house and says to her young relation by marriage, David's mother, well, I'm sure you're going to have a daughter and she's going to be called Betsy Trotwood and I'm going to raise her in my image. And when David is born a boy, Betsy Trotwood is not impressed and decides she's going to have nothing more to do with this family. But years later, David ends up finding his aunt, Betsy Trotwood, again, and they end up building bridges and mending the relationship. And she ends up playing a really important part in his life. And I adore Betsy Trotwood in every way. She is just wonderful. She is just one of those characters who is both like used for comic effect in a really powerful way, but also is a really sincere portrait of someone. There are moments in which she's very funny. For example, she hates donkeys to walk across her land, and so whenever anyone comes by on a donkey, she runs out into the garden to chase them away. And she is quite comical in some ways, but she's also really genuinely kind-hearted, and you get to see the depths of her feelings and the depths of her kindness a lot in David Copperfield, and I love that. Betsy Trotwood is such a highlight of David Copperfield for me. I love her as a character so much. My next Victorian literary matriarch is not from a novel but from a play, and that is Lady Bracknell from The Importance of Being Earnest. The Importance of Being Earnest is a really fun play by Oscar Wilde, very witty and entertaining, about a man who calls himself two different names depending on whether he's in London or in the countryside, and he wants to marry a woman called Gwendolen, and Gwendolyn's mother, Lady Bracknell, is quite a fierce character who is very entertaining in every way. I really, really enjoy her. She's got a sort of like Lady Catherine de Bourgh feel to her, I would say, and she's very, very sharp and very entertaining. Let me find you some excellent lines from her, because she has some hilarious bits. When Jack, the main character, tells Lady Bracknell that he has lost both his parents, that he's an orphan, she says, "Both? To lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness." And when he admits that he actually has no idea who his parents were and that he was found in a handbag in the cloakroom of Victoria Station and was a foundling, this is what Lady Bracknell says: "You can hardly imagine that I and Lord Bracknell would dream of allowing our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, to marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel. Good morning, Mr. Worthing." And off she goes, refusing her consent. I really enjoy Lady Bracknell as a character. She is great fun. And then finally, for my 5 Victorian matriarchs, I wanted to mention Miss Stanbury from He Knew Who Was Right by Anthony Trollope. I love Miss Stanbury. She might be my favourite of all 5 of these, although I don't know, Mrs. Thornton would be high up there too, but I love Miss Stanbury so much. She is a wonderful, wonderful character. So He Knew Who Was Right is a big, long novel with lots of different plots in. The main plot is about the separation of a married couple, but one of the main subplots is about a young woman called Dorothy who goes to stay with her aunt Jemima Stanbury. Miss Jemima Stanbury is unmarried, she has quite a lot of money, and she has strong views about where she's going to leave her money after her death. It's long and complicated, but basically she was left the money by a man who had promised to marry her but then didn't. And so she feels that after her death, she ought to leave all the money back to his family rather than to her own, because she feels that she sort of shouldn't have it. And therefore she has strong views about to what extent she can help her own family. And she also sort of disapproves of quite a lot of her own family. She has a lot of very strong views on everything. She's quite a determined character who doesn't like to change her mind. But underneath all that, she has a very big heart and is very, very lonely. And so the relationship between her and Dorothy and how it builds over the course of the novel is just like my favourite part of Who Knew Who Was Right. It's beautiful and lovely and I love her. But to give you a sense of Miss Stanbury's character, I'm going to read you the letter she writes to her sister-in-law to say that she will take on Dorothy. And you get such a good sense of her as a character from this letter. "My dear Sister Stanbury, your son Hugh has taken to courses of which I do not approve, and therefore I have put an end to my connection with him. I shall be happy to entertain your daughter Dorothy in my house if you and she approve of such a plan. Should you agree to this, she will be welcome to receive you or her sister, not her brother, in my house any Wednesday morning between 9:30 and 12:30. I will endeavour to make my house pleasant to her and useful, and will make her an allowance of £25 per annum for her clothes as long as she may remain with me. I shall expect her to be regular at meals, to be constant in going to church, and not to read modern novels. I intend the arrangement to be permanent, but of course I must retain the power of closing it if and when I shall see fit. Its permanence must be contingent on my life. I have no power of providing for anyone after my death. Yours truly, Jemima Stanbury. P.S. I hope the young lady does not have any false hair about her. I just really thoroughly enjoy Jemima Stanbury as a character. I find her absolutely hilarious and delightful, but also I think, like Betsy Trotwood, she has that real combination of sort of humour and real heart, which I just really, really enjoy. So there we go. Those are 5 of my favourite like matriarch characters from Victorian literature. Do let me know down in the comments if you can think of any other characters who fit into this mould, any of your favourites. That's all for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.